All right, everyone, this was actually going to be the main news of the day, even though it's hardly newsworthy. But then, Soleimani was assassinated and Bernie Sanders decided that it was 1835. Julian Castro is out of the Democratic field. He had been ailing for a while now. Keep in mind, he and Gillibrand were the two people initially that I said had the best qualifications potentially to go up against Donald Trump. The fact that he's dropped out and wasn't really a thing for months anyway, Gillibrand was gone early. The fact that Buttigieg, who's basically would have been third on my list, is, he's in fourth place. He got kneecapped by Bloomberg. This doesn't say good things about the Dems' 2020 chances. Iran and ma hashtag World War III bullshit aside, I don't see good things for them ahead. And here's the thing. Julian Castro entered the race with several particular qualifications. He is generally well-spoken. He's very good at giving speeches, whether scripted or off the cuff. He's relatively young. He's in his early 40s, I believe, like 43, 44. He's sort of an Obama-looking guy. Politically, less experience, more activism, more of the soaring rhetoric. Charisma-wise, he reminded me very much of Obama. And that would have been a threat to Trump potentially. Unlike Biden, who's running on Obama nostalgia, Julian Castro could have said, well, I basically am the next Obama. I'm giving you basically what you had before as an alternative to Trump. The problem for Julian Castro is that he ran his own campaign off a cliff in two ways. First, he never got aggressive enough early enough on in the race to capitalize upon the fact that he quite clearly could have outdebated his opponents. He could have stood against them in the public square. He didn't have to do it in a nasty way, but he would have been able to differentiate himself, and he never really did that. Number two, he wasted his time pandering. Instead of developing better platforms, he'd rather sit up on stage and literally translate his own words into Spanish for no apparent reason whatsoever. Now, this may be good with a tiny segment of Hispanic voters that care if the candidate is bilingual. As far as independent voters go, it just looks like it's pandering. I would say it was very funny to see him because he's, actually good at speaking Spanish, unlike Beto, upstaging Robert Francis O'Rourke every single time in the debates. And you could see every time that Beto would start speaking Spanish, they would immediately pan the camera to Julian Castro, and he'd be looking over with a smirk on his face. And it was the best thing ever. Those were like the best moments in the early debates when they were both present. And of course, Castro didn't qualify for many of them. With him out, the race thins a little bit more now. He was running at like 1.2%, not very high. With Kamala Harris as maybe ideologically the most close to him, I would say in some ways, where does his support go for what little it's worth? I'm not sure, but I have a feeling it just sort of trickles around with the lower half of the field. Because if a person was still supporting Julian Castro recently, they obviously don't care much, at least at the moment, about electability, because he wasn't electable. They're probably an ideologue. They're probably just far left, and they want specifically the person of color candidate. By the way, can we coin the term polk for people of light skin so that we can have a diaspora sort of terminology for people who simply have less melanin or something? Because it'd make just as much sense as person of color. There's no similarity culturally between somebody who's an Aboriginal Australian and somebody from fucking, some tribal region in the middle of Brazil, yet they're both considered people of color under this one universal standard by the American people. I think it's kind of an outdated term. It's sort of a little bit like the terminology of maybe the early Cold War period. It's just really weird shit. Anyway, I would assume that in Cory Booker's not electable. He might get some support because he happens to be non-white. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe Elizabeth Warren, ideologically speaking. I can't imagine that a Julian Castro fan would want to back Biden because he's vastly at variance. Buttigieg is perceived of, and this isn't real, but the perception is of him as being racially insensitive. Again, this is bullshit, but that's the way he's perceived. Bernie Sanders, at this point, he can't really absorb too much support because he's he's almost 80 years old. He's had a heart attack. He's an avowed socialist. And Julian Castro actually was one of the most open borders fanatics that you had within the field. Of all of the Democrats, I think Julian Castro and O'Rourke really were the most fanatic when it came to wanting to be open borders. The elimination of him from the field ironically brings stability to the field in that it takes one of the most fringe people out. It would be sort of like if Yang, who endorses a variant of communism with UBI, were to drop out. It would actually increase the stability of the field. And the irony is that if Yang were to drop out right now, with Booker, at some point he'll drop out, you'd have an all-white field. I'm sure it'll probably happen somewhere after Super Tuesday. Booker will probably stay until after that. Yang as well. And then it'll be a very, very stark sort of thing because the Democrats will wake up to a field that is completely white and mostly geriatric. It represents the Democratic Party, the party of progressives, the party of moving forward, the party of acknowledging and even appreciating a demographic shift, the party of acknowledging the legitimacy of people who literally call for the erasing of certain ethnic groups, and yet they'd be all old white people. Be very, very, other than Buttigieg, who's a young person. It'd be very, very interesting to see. When the top of the field is, again, it's Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bloomberg. All of these people are white. All of these people are over 70. All of these people have long-term careers within political pandering. They're all basically the same, dude. Buttigieg is the only holdout, and that's simply because of his age. That's the only difference that he has. And he's not massively wealthy. He's not technically a career politician because he hasn't gotten old enough yet to be one. It'd be funny if Tulsi Gabbard ended up gobbling up the votes. It's possible. It'd be funny if he endorsed somebody, actually. Again, so he endorses Yang or something. He's like, oh, I want that $1,000 a month. I don't care if it breaks the spine of the economy. Hey, I'm a socialist anyway, so I obviously don't give a fuck. Basically, it'd be him being honest, I suppose. So yeah, it'll be funny to see where the support goes. The more the race thins, before voting begins especially, the better, because we'll begin to get a better picture of who's actually going to be ahead. Right now, Biden, he's consistently 10 points ahead, but he's consistently pulling in a few points behind in some of the early states, which is a very bad place to be, by the way, for him, especially with regards to New Hampshire. If it's anyone but Sanders winning it, though, Sanders is fucked, which I think would be good. I call upon every man, woman, and child in New Hampshire to organize against Bernie Sanders. If you're a Republican, it's an open primary state. Take a Dem ballot and vote for Joe Biden. Try to get Bernie Sanders, keep him from winning New Hampshire. If you can stop Sanders there, we can stop him countrywide, and that would be a good thing. Make it clear that socialism will not be tolerated. What better way to do that than not to bother waiting until the general election at all? Keep him from even becoming the nominee. Cause a schism within the Dems. Let him collapse, and maybe they'll gain some sense of decency thereafter. And maybe then there'll be like a party of JFK thing, and I'll be able to vote for someone who's not a Republican, because as a person who's not religious, not really a conservative, my natural inclination is not to side with the Republicans. I don't think a lot of people don't realize this. They haven't been on the channel long enough to understand. I was like a Ron Paul libertarian in 2012, refused to vote for Romney or Obama, and I had voted for Obama in 2008, mainly because John McCain frightened the fucking shit out of me the same way Clinton did in 2016 with his warmongering. Castro's out. Yeah, another one bites the dust. Not that it really means that much. That's about all. Peace out.